Tom Herman and the Texas Longhorns are not able to get it done against the number 13 Iowa State Cyclones. Texas men's basketball off to a pretty incredible start. And we'll go ahead and take a look at this past week in the NFL. All this and more coming up on College Press Box. Welcome into the season finale of College Press Box. I am your host, Justin Morris. 2020 has been anything but normal, and along with that has come with how we have done this very show. But we persevered and are excited to bring you the 11th installment of College Press Box for the fall 2020 semester. Getting right into it, Texas faced the number 13 Iowa State Cyclones this past Saturday for senior day at DKR. Let's head down to DKR for the highlights. First quarter we go, midway through one. QB1 Sam Ehlinger with 17-yard run to put Texas up 10-0. The Iowa State was not going to go down without a fight. Brock Purdy with a 35-yard pass to Sean Shaw. Spin move on Stearns to make it 10-7. Let's take it down now to the second half. Ehlinger looking way downfield and finds number 13, Brennan Eagles, just at, 11-yard line for a 45-yard pass. And then 2nd and 6 here, Ehlinger finds Jared Wiley in the end zone to extend the lead 20-10. Let's take it on down to the fourth quarter. Cyclones running back Breece Hall, one of the best running backs in America, goes right down the middle to put the Cyclones up 23-20, with a minute 20 to go. And 3rd and 10, all the time in the world. Sam here looking to play comeback, but gets sacked by Latrell Bankston. And Dicker now looking to take it to overtime, kicks it up, and just curves right there at the end. The final from DKR, Iowa State 23, Texas 20.
This past Friday, Longhorn fans were disappointed with a 23-20 loss to Iowa State. Despite being in control for much of the game, bad decisions led to the Cyclones taking the lead late in the fourth quarter. Head coach Tom Herman gave his thoughts on the loss, and Texas no longer being in Big 12 championship contention.
Just, again, heartbroken for our seniors, heartbroken for the rest of the team, but still understand that we've got a job to do. And that job is to prepare to try to go 1-0 in Manhattan, Kansas in 8 days.
Herman went on to summarize the season as a whole.
We knew we were going to play a bunch of close games this year. We knew that there's a ton of parity in this league that, I think we've all seen that throughout the course of the season. We're going to have a conference champion with at least 2 losses in conference. I think that'll be the first time, maybe ever. So a ton of parity in this league. And, we've won some close ones throughout the season and just couldn't find a way to get this one.
After this disappointing loss, fans have begun to call for Tom Herman to be fired. Taquan Graham and Sam Ehlinger gave their thoughts.
Honestly, I really don't listen to the opinions of, people outside of, Texas football. I respect Coach Herman, and I think he's fit to lead this team. People can say whatever they want about him, but, he brought me in here, and I've been under him for 4 years, and I'm going to continue to have his support the whole way.
I don't think it's ever fully on coaching. There's a lot of, that's a $1 million question that everybody's been trying to figure out for the last 10 years. Really respect Coach Herman, and I'm so thankful for him for the opportunity that I've had to play at this great university. And I do believe that he is the right guy.
Texas will hope to move on from this loss as they head up to the Little Apple to face Kansas State this Saturday. From Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium, I'm John Kelly, TSTV Sports.
And joining us tonight in our virtual studio is football analyst Jake Herman. Welcome in. Key to note, Jake is not related to Tom Herman, contrary to popular belief. So, Jake, Texas seemingly had control of the game for the most part, but really fell apart at the end. What led the Horns to the loss?
Yeah, you said it, Justin. It really looked like Texas was in control of the game, came out with a 10-0 lead, came out of the locker room, built that lead back up to 10 points. It really looked like Texas was on the right track, but it fell apart. The offense really struggled in the second half as Iowa State started to slowly impose their will in the line of scrimmage, gaining control of the game on both sides of the ball. On the defensive side, Texas couldn't generate enough of a pass rush to hold off Iowa State's comeback. Only 1 sack, only 2 quarterback hurries. That's not going to be enough to stop an experienced quarterback like Brock Purdy, who ended up getting very comfortable in the pocket and picking apart the Texas defense for over 300 yards through the air. So the defense had they didn't have one of their worst performances of the season, but they weren't creating the kind of negative plays that they needed to keep Iowa State behind the chains. And that allowed the Cyclones to really control the time of possession and slowly come back and win this ballgame.
Absolutely. And finger pointing is not uncommon within the Texas program, but this one really seemed to be a coaching issue more than some other games in the past. So how much blame does Tom Herman deserve on this loss?
Yeah, the finger pointing game is not a new one for Texas fans these days. And, it's worth pointing out a concerning trend. Tom Herman has now lost 4 games after leading at halftime during his tenure at Texas. And this is the second time in 2020 that he has blown a fourth quarter lead. Now, I already talked about some of the ways that Texas let this game slip away, but what I didn't mention was the fact that Tom Herman decided to go for it on 4th down twice in this football game, and they went 0 for 2. Obviously, those plays have a huge impact on the outcome of the game, and when you go 0 for 2 like that, there's going to be second guessing. So let's give him a fair shake and take a look back at some of the plays that happened. The first attempt was this fake punt. Now, I had no problem with this fake punt attempt. You're kind of in no man's land near midfield. You don't even have your regular punter, Ryan Bushevsky, of course, out for the season. And the defense really needed a rest at this point of the game. It just didn't work out. It was well defended. I respect the gamble. However, the second 4th down attempt in the red zone with a 4-point lead in the 4th quarter is where I question Coach Herman a little bit. I think this decision was a bit too risky. If you take the points, you have a 7-point lead, and in turn, you can dial up the pressure defensively and start to use the clock to your advantage, knowing that the best Iowa State can do is come down and try and tie the score. Instead, as you can see, they don't convert, and this decision completely backfires because Iowa State now, later in the game, is on the doorstep of taking the lead, and Texas has to burn a costly timeout, and they pretty much had to let Iowa State score and surrender the lead in order to have any chance of getting the ball back and mounting a comeback. So even if you give Iowa State all the credit in the world for getting into that position, this situation was avoidable for Texas if they had just taken the points. And so that's really frustrating for Texas fans when it comes to Tom Herman in this football game.
Definitely. And finally, this is our favorite question to ask anytime Texas loses. And besides last year's Kansas game, this question seems more real than ever. Where does Tom Herman sit right now as head coach of the Texas Longhorns, and how hot is the hot seat he's on?
Well, in his 4th season, Tom Herman has not exactly lived up to expectations. He looked to be trending up. After his 2nd season, the Longhorns made an appearance in the Big 12 title game, won the Sugar Bowl against Georgia, but now it appears to be a little bit stagnant. But I think that unless the rails really come off down the stretch against Kansas State and Kansas, we're looking at another year of the Coach Herman era in Austin. You can't ignore the fact that he has 3 years left on his contract, which has a $15 million buyout option in the middle of a surging pandemic. Now, unless you can bring in Urban Meyer or some sort of dream hire, I don't think that this buyout price is going to be worth it. This team is not a disaster. It is not in a state of disarray. They just haven't been able to win the type of close games against conference opponents that you would have expected to this point. But if he can finish 7-3, get through this season without any further embarrassments, I think Tom Herman deserves a shot at using one of those 5-star quarterbacks he recruited and trying to get things on the right track in 2021.
Yeah, great analysis, Jake. A lot to consider just given the season in general. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. And when we come back, we will take a look at how Texas men's basketball has begun their season. Stick around. Welcome back into College Press Box. Thanks for tuning in. Texas men's basketball got off to a hot start in their season opener last Wednesday, where they faced the UTRGV Vaqueros, easily taking that game 91-55. On Monday, the Texas Longhorns traveled to Asheville, North Carolina for the Maui Invitational, a tournament originally scheduled to take place in Hawaii, but was moved due to the pandemic. In the first round of the tournament, Texas faced the Davidson Wildcats. 6 players in double digits in Ramey, Sims, Brown, Coleman, and both Andrew and Kai Jones. Texas off to a bit of a rough start, but was able to straighten things out by the half, leading 43-39. Then in the second half, the Texas defense let a little too much get by getting outscored in the half and bringing the game down to the wire. A jumper in the paint by Courtney Ramey kept the team alive with 20 seconds left, and the defense was able to hold off 2 3-point attempts from the Wildcats to ultimately take this one 78-76. And joining us tonight is men's basketball analyst Matt Marinchak. Welcome in. In Monday's contest, Texas contained the Wildcats in order to move on to the semifinals of the Maui Invitational. It's still early on in the season, and the Longhorns have shown a lot more good signs than bad. So what are your overall impressions of this team in Monday's game?
Well, so far, Texas is 2-0 and ranked 17th to start the season, so there's a lot to like about this team. Texas is getting it done against their opponents, scoring 84.5 points per game while holding their opponents to only 65 points per game. They also have a plus 12 rebounding advantage. What's different about this year for Texas compared to previous years is that Texas spreads the ball around a lot more, and the offense doesn't run through one guy. They have 5 players averaging at least 10 points per game, and it's really helped them the first 2 games is that Courtney Ramey's been on a hot streak, and he's led the team in scoring in both of the games. They beat a Davidson team that was favored by 8.5 because they played hard and they crashed the glass. But since the game against Davidson was so close, they exposed some weaknesses in Texas that were not exposed in the first game. Texas gave up a lot of points in the paint, and they turned over the ball a lot more than they should have. I think that the biggest weakness for Texas so far this season, and it's really been a lingering issue for Texas, is shooting threes. Against the Wildcats, Texas only shot 8 from 28 from 3. They took a lot of ill-advised threes, and that ultimately almost cost Texas the game. And lastly, Texas has been struggling a lot from the charity stripe. They've only been hitting 65.5% of their free throws this season, and that's something they really need to improve on if they want to win close games.
Yeah, a lot of improvements that Texas still needs to develop, but like I said, we're pretty early on in the season. One of the biggest things Texas has going for them this season is having a very put-together team with Greg Brown, especially. Brown being the only one-and-done level player on the Texas roster. And he even seems a little different, have a little different mentality than many of the other one-and-dones in the past, thinking of Mo Bamba or Jackson Hayes. Along with Brown, are there any other standout players on this team?
We could start off with Brown. The 5-star freshman has really shown why he's the number 8 player coming out of high school. Through his first 2 games, he's averaging 11 points per game and 8 rebounds per game. He had a double-double in his first career game with the Longhorns. He really hasn't found his footing shooting from the field yet, but he knows how to draw fouls, and he leads the team in both free throws attempted and free throws made. And he has shown his elite athleticism with high-flying dunks by bodying opposing defenders. I think another standout player is Kai Jones. Jones is a sophomore forward from the Bahamas, and he has really shown a lot of improvement from last season. Through the first 2 games, he's averaging 13.5 points per game and 5 rebounds per game. But the most important thing is he hasn't missed a shot all season. The man don't miss. If he continues to play this efficient, he will solidify a spot in the starting rotation. And these 2 guys, if they continue to shine, Texas will have a great front court going in conference play.
Yeah, definitely. Very hard to disagree with that. And as I mentioned earlier, this Texas team is very put together, even early on in the season. But as usual with Texas, I assume they'll eventually hit a road bump. So, Matt, what do you think will be the biggest challenge down the road for Texas?
Well, actually, I think there's a few different road bumps down the road for Texas. There's a lot of high-ranked matchups for them. They played Villanova, Kentucky. They played Baylor and Kansas twice. And I really don't think Texas will lose all of these matchups, but they're not really that favorable for Texas. But as you know, this is college basketball, so anybody can be upset at any given time. So we'll see how Texas fares. And besides, these are only 6 games, so if Texas plays well the rest of the season, they should be in prime position to make the tournament.
Yeah, we can hope as fans. So thank you, Matt, for coming on. Always a pleasure having you here. When we come back, we'll tackle the NFL and their current handling of the coronavirus pandemic. Stick around. Welcome back into College Press Box. The NFL has had an interesting past few days, with the Denver Broncos playing against the New Orleans Saints without a quarterback, and the Ravens-Steelers game being pushed back multiple times. Joining us tonight is Jordan Geelhoed to talk about those games and plenty more.
That's right. Thank you, Justin. And there was definitely a lot of things happening in the NFL this weekend, and I'm here to break those down, starting with the first game of the division battle between the Colts and the Titans. The Colts' opportunity to secure the head spot at the AFC South was thwarted by the man they called Derrick Henry, who had 178 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. Henry's ability was already asserted at this point, but I mean, he's one of the best that there is in the league right now. He completely trounced any chance that the Colts had and secured the Titans a top spot in the AFC South with an 8-3 resounding victory there. And going across the Great Lakes to Cincinnati, we had the Giants and the Bengals. This wasn't that impressive of a game as neither team could really get much started on offense or on defense. There was this nice kick return for Cincinnati. When you have Brandon Allen at your starting quarterback, it's hard to try and get any momentum off of that. The Giants did come away with a win there, and they do come away with the top spot in the NFC East. But it's really not that impressive with a 4-7 record. And with the Cardinals and the Patriots, this game was pretty competitive. Neither quarterback played particularly awesome, which is strange considering that we've seen these quarterbacks play awesome before this season. Kyler Murray and Cam Newton had kind of off games. There were plenty of turnovers, plenty of missed opportunities, but we learned that you can never count out Bill Belichick as he completed the victory with a last-second field goal right there to put the Patriots right in the middle of the playoff hunt, and the Cardinals are kind of on a skid right now. Going to another division matchup between the Dolphins and the Jets, this one wasn't particularly close as you had Fitzpatrick with the Dolphins offense doing Fitz magic things, and the Dolphins defense just completely blanketing any chance that the Jets had at any kind of offensive scoring at all. There was a field goal for the Jets, but that was pretty much it there. This wasn't a particularly close game, and the Jets continue their perfect season, perfect meaning 0-16, but hey, it'll help them if they can get Trevor Lawrence next year's draft. The Browns and the Jaguars was probably more of a competitive game than most thought. Mike Glennon and Colin Johnson, as you saw right there, the former UT product, doing some good things to keep the Jaguars in the mix, but it wasn't quite enough as Nick Chubb and the Browns were able to pull away with the victory. The Browns are 8-3 and have secured their first non-losing season in a very long time, and the Jaguars are at 1-10 and are in, well, they're pretty much out of the playoffs at this point. A pretty good matchup between the Bills and the Chargers is on deck in the Meadowlands. Josh Allen versus Justin Herbert, two QBs doing very well. The Bills kind of jumped out to an early lead and never really looked back as their defense contained the surging rookie QB Justin Herbert in a very impressive stand. This one was won by Buffalo 27-17. And the game between the Falcons and the Raiders was surprisingly a blowout, not in the way you might expect. The Falcons completely blanketed any chance that the Raiders had at any offensive momentum as they scored on both defense and offense. And they won this game by a hefty margin by over 30 points, which is odd for Falcons fans. They probably don't see it that often, so they must enjoy it while they can. The Falcons aren't totally dead, and the Raiders, well, this hurts their chance to get a wild card spot. One of the more competitive games of the day was between the Vikings and the Panthers. Teddy Bridgewater having his revenge game. This was a very offensive-heavy game. As you saw right there, the rookie superstar Justin Jefferson catching a touchdown. The Panthers responded with some of their own as Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel had pretty good games through the air and through the ground. Mike Davis had a good game as well. It was competitive all the way through, and it came down to the final field goal, and Carolina just couldn't put it through the sticks as the Vikings win that one, keeping their playoff hopes alive. And Carolina, they might be looking at next season. One of the weirder games, as Justin mentioned, was the Broncos versus the Saints, as the Broncos played without a starting quarterback. Practice squad wide receiver Kendall Hinton was taking snaps, and it went about as well as you might expect. I think he may have completed one or two passes to his own team. He completed some to the other team as well. Taysom Hill and the Saints didn't have to do much on offense to win this game. I mean, you can't totally blame the Broncos. It's very hard to play in the National Football League without a starting quarterback, but the Saints cruised to a 9-2 victory at the top of the NFC. Also a very competitive NFC game was this one between the Rams and the 49ers. Not much great offensive play, but the defenses both did very well as both of them scored, as you just saw with the 49ers and Aaron Donald causing the strip. That resulted in a Rams score. This, as many other games did today, came down to the final field goal, and off the foot of Robbie Gould, the 49ers won that one, keeping them in the playoff hunt and demoting the Rams down to second in the NFC West, which is one of the more competitive divisions in the league. And this game, Chiefs versus Buccaneers, one of the biggest games all season, was just incredible. The Patrick Mahomes to Tyreek Hill connection was unreal. Tyreek Hill ended with over 250 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, 13 receptions. I mean, these are Jerry Rice numbers. These are Randy Moss numbers. It was great to see. The Chiefs jumped out to an early lead, and the Buccaneers did try to come back with a second half surge, but it wasn't enough as the Chiefs walked away with the victory there and are pretty resoundingly the best team in the league, although it depends if you ask a Steelers fan. Some final things that I might leave you with. We had all but 2 of the games being played already. One of them is the Monday night game between the Seahawks and the Eagles tonight that's being played right now. And the other one is the Ravens and Steelers game on Wednesday night, which keeps getting pushed back. It got rescheduled 3 times, supposed to play on Thanksgiving night. The Ravens put 21 players on their COVID list, many of them starters, one of them being their star quarterback, Lamar Jackson. Both teams are dealing with COVID outbreaks, so it's possible this game isn't even played. But stay tuned on Wednesday to see if any updates come in, especially if you are a fan of either of those teams, because that game could have major playoff implications. Also, the ever-continuing, ever-changing MVP race, I think, gained a front runner in these past couple weeks, and it's no surprise. It's Patrick Mahomes. Everyone else is kind of a tier below. Kyler Murray has kind of started to, fall back to earth after some pretty incredible games. Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson could all be considered in the hunt. But in my opinion, they're all, unless one of them really has an uptick in production, they're kind of fighting over second place. It's maybe Mahomes' trophy to lose. Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook are also in the conversation, as both are doing incredible things for their teams. But it's much harder for a running back to win the prize. I don't think one has won one since Adrian Peterson way back when. And I think that might be all that I have for you, Justin. So I'm going to send it back to you.
Great analysis, Jordan. Thanks again for coming on. When we come back, we will take a look at the Longhorns in the NFL. You won't want to miss it. For the final time tonight, and for the final time I get to say this, welcome back into College Press Box. Throughout the semester, we've been highlighting some former Longhorns in the NFL, and this week featured some especially interesting names. Starting off is the unlikely surprise appearance of Colt McCoy. After New York Giants quarterback Daniel Jones went down early in the third quarter, McCoy was able to give the Giants the push they needed to win the game and take control of the NFC East. Up next is Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver Colin Johnson. The rookie has had a 46-yard catch and ran for the end zone this past Sunday, helping a depleted Jaguars receiving corps keep the game in contest against the red-hot Cleveland Browns. Adrian Phillips, a safety for the Houston Texans, slowing down a Kyler Murray pass there and doing his best to contain the Arizona Cardinals. And finally, another rookie hanging out down in Florida this year is safety Brandon Jones for the Miami Dolphins. You can see right there, running right down Broadway, sacking New York Jets quarterback Sam Darnold. The Dolphins are 7-4 so far. The Texas Longhorns women's basketball team has started off their season as impressive as they could possibly be. The Horns opened their season to the SMU Mustangs last Wednesday and easily took them down 90-51. And then on Sunday, Texas took down another DFW area college, the University of North Texas. The Horns took that one 106-69. The highlight of the game against the Mean Green was junior forward Charlie Collier, who grabbed the attention of many with her 44-point and 16-rebound contribution to Texas's win. Ultimately, Collier was named Big 12 Player of the Week on Monday, and Texas will look to defend the drum this Wednesday as they face the Louisiana Tech Lady Texters. On Sunday, Texas football junior O-lineman Sam Cosmi declared for the NFL draft and is forgoing both the rest of the season and his senior season. The Humble, Texas native said in a statement, "Coming in as a young, skinny lineman who started out on the scout team and ended up where I am now is a true statement to God. This program and everyone who has helped me become the man I am today." Cosmi is projected to be one of the top picks in the upcoming NFL draft, with many projections having him be a mid-first round pick. Texas has not had a first-round pick since Malcolm Brown went 32nd in the 2015 NFL draft to the New England Patriots. On Monday night, Texas safety Caden Stearns made a similar announcement for going the rest of the season and electing to enter the NFL draft. The Cibolo native has been a core defensive back for Texas and was a team captain this past season since he graced the field, and he will look to carry his talents to the NFL. On Saturday, Texas basketball sophomore center Will Baker announced he will elect to transfer. The Austin native was a 5-star recruit out of Westlake High School and played in 23 games last season, averaging a little over 2 points per game and just under 2 rebounds a game as well. The 7-footer raised many questions last season as a potential one-and-done, but ended up not coming to fruition. Baker was a radio, television, and film major like myself and was drawn to Texas in part due to the prestige of the film program. Head coach Chaka Smart said in a statement, "We are very grateful for Will's contribution to our basketball program. We wish Will all the best as he pursues his next opportunity." Prior to Saturday's final home game against the Iowa State Cyclones, the University of Texas unveiled a statue of Julius Whittier in the north entrance of Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium. Whittier was the first black football letterman to play for the University of Texas. The statue has been in production since July, when the university announced the creation of the statue, as well as other adjustments to the university due to the acknowledgement of UT's racial past. Whittier was a pivotal piece to the 1969 and 1970 national championships Texas won. The former O-lineman and tight end did a lot off the field as well, receiving his master's and law degree from the university. The San Antonio native was a senior prosecutor for most of his life at the Dallas County District Attorney's Office. And finally, safety measures have been installed at the Frank Irwin Center for the upcoming Texas men's and women's basketball seasons. Fans are being asked to wear masks and practice social distancing during their time at the Irwin Center. Hand sanitizer kiosks are installed throughout the arena, and staff will regularly wipe down frequently touched surfaces such as door handles, armrests, indoor and outdoor furniture, and elevator and escalator interiors. Texas will not be selling single-game tickets this season and will instead only be offered to renewed season ticket holders. And now let's take a look at this week in Longhorn sports. Starting on Wednesday, women's basketball team, as mentioned earlier, will be taking on Louisiana Tech Lady Techsters. That game will be at 7 p.m. on Longhorn Network. Saturday, the big one, Texas football will play in Manhattan against Kansas State. You can catch that game on Fox at 11 a.m. And wrapping things up on Sunday, men's basketball will face the game that we've been talking about pretty frequently on here against Villanova. That game will be on ESPN, and tip-off is at noon. Women's basketball will face Texas A&M for a Lone Star Showdown. The game is at 7 p.m., and you can catch it on ESPN2. And before we go, a very special shout-out to those who have contributed to our Horn Raiser campaign. Thank you to Samantha and Beth Pearl, Cheryl and David Pitt, and former TSTV sports volunteer Micah Rodriguez for their donations. Visit hornraiser.utexas.edu to contribute today and get a shout-out on our shows. As I will be graduating this upcoming Saturday, it is with great pleasure that this will be my final appearance on College Press Box. Thank you to those that have come before me and helped me be the best sports director I could possibly be. Specifically, shout out to Josh Martella and Christine Taylor. And of course, I would love to thank my fellow sports director and partner in crime this year, Daniel Shi, who has done an incredible job at maintaining College Press Box all the way from Taipei, Taiwan. And another quick shout out to Matt Marinchak, who has been the assistant sports director this past semester and has done an incredible job at helping us put this show together week in and week out. Thank you to those who have cheered me on from the sidelines while making an appearance on this show. Your support does not go unnoticed. And a very special shout out also to all volunteers who have contributed to the show and all of our shows this semester. It has not been an easy task to do, and this undertaking has been really appreciated by all those who have contributed. Tune in Wednesday night on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter for the hour-long Tournament of Champions episode of College Crossfire live at 9 p.m. And wake up Friday morning with the 1-0 Sports Show at 10 a.m. For all of those in our virtual studio and our virtual master control, I am Justin Morris, signing off one last time on College Press Box, wishing you a great night.